Hi everyone, Ian here. In this video we're going to go over the drawing tools in Cavalry, in particular the pencil tool, the pen tool and the edit shape tool, which you can use to edit any editable shape in Cavalry. So starting off with the pencil tool, to use this you just click and drag in the viewport and then whatever you draw will then get converted into a path when you release the mouse. So something to note is that the pencil tool has an accuracy up here. Now, by default, it's set to low. And what this means is that when you draw a path, we'll just smooth out the kinks and kind of turn this into a path with as few points as possible. So the first path I drew had a high accuracy, and you can see there's more points in that. So it's more accurately representing any wobbles that I did. And the second path has been smoothed out, so it's very few points. As you can see, they're just basically the peaks and troughs of the line I was drawing. So something to go over at the very beginning of the conversation on the drawing tools in Cavalry is that when you just draw, you'll get a new layer to draw into. And if you keep drawing, you're just going to carry on drawing into that layer. So if I load the settings for this editable shape, go over to the stroke tab, and then let's click on the stroke color, and then let's just pick a color up here. You'll see that all of the strokes have been colored blue. If I do a dash pattern here, something like this, you'll see that everything gets the dash pattern. That's because with this layer selected, when I draw something, it draws into that layer. So whatever's selected, you're drawing into that layer. It's very much like Photoshop in that way. If you deselect something, so if you have nothing selected when you start drawing, then you get a new layer when you draw. So there are a couple of things that you can do when you to deselect the layer. The first one is to push the S key when you're in the drawing tool. So see I have a layer selected down here. I can push the S key, it's mentioned over in the help, push S, so that's deselected the layer. So when I draw, I get a new shape. So that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is just to hit the escape key, and that will also deselect the layer so that you can then draw into a new layer. Okay, so if I go back and select the original layer again and I draw, then I'll be drawing into that original layer. So just to hammer that point home, whatever is selected, you will be drawing into that layer. Moving on to the pen tool, it works in the way that you would expect. You just click and drag to create Bezier points. If you've drawn some Bezier points and then you want to then create a linear point, you just hold the Alt key and then you click. To continue drawing linear points, you can just click the mouse, or if you want to switch back to Bezier points, you can just click and drag again. To close a path, you just need to move the mouse over the start point for the contour, and then you can see a little circle up here, and that means that you can close. The close distance can be set up here. It's set to 10 at the moment, but I can click in on that point and then drag the handles if I want to. See that the path direction is indicated by the little arrow here. And then that's it really. So the same as the pencil tool, if you continue drawing, you will end up drawing in the same shape. But you can draw into a new shape by using the S key. So if I push S for new shape, you can see it down here in the help. Then I will draw a new shape. You can see that here. Another interesting point to know is that if I want to draw an open contour, so here this is an open contour because it isn't closed, I haven't gone back to the beginning again. If I want to draw a series of open contours with the pen tool, you see that I've got this little preview here which indicates I'm carrying on drawing this path. If I want to draw a new contour, I need to push the C key, C for contour, that's the top one down here. If I push the C key, then that's requested a new contour. You can see that down at the bottom here, new contour requested, but it's left the shape selected. So I can now draw a second open contour in here and keep going if I want to. So I've drawn a series of 3 open contours in the same shape, and you just hit the C key to request a new contour. A couple more tips for working with the pen tool. And that is when you're drawing a shape with the pen tool, you can hold down the shift key and this will turn on angle snapping. So angle snapping means that whatever you're doing, whether you're placing a point or whether you're dragging Bezier handles, angle snapping will limit you to only certain angles. The angles can be set up in the tool options up here, so it's set to 45-degree angles at the moment. It's actually easier to see if I just draw linear points. So just clicking rather than clicking and dragging gives me linear points, and you can see that everything I draw will now be on an angle. And yeah, that's how you can turn on the angle snapping. Also, there's other snapping available in here. So if you go into the snapping settings down in the toolbar here, you can see that I've got point snapping turned on, and if I just turn enable grid snapping on now, when I'm drawing, you can see that I can snap to the other points in this shape. So that will help me align everything nicely as I'm drawing. A couple of other tricks for working with the pen tool in Cavalry. Firstly, let's say I've drawn a partial shape and then I want to close it. Now, if I take myself into the Edit Shape tool, more of this later, I can close this shape by taking this open endpoint, or either of the open endpoints actually, just take that and just drag it on top of the other shape. You'll see a closed circle appear, and when you let go, the handles will unify and you'll get yourself a closed shape. So that's one of the tricks I wanted to show you. And then I'll just rewind this and say, well, what if instead of just closing it by dragging, what if I wanted to continue drawing from where I left off and then close the shape that way, or in fact just leave it open? Well, you see that if I am on a shape where I already have something drawn, that's open, when I move the pen tool over either of the ends, I get a little green circle. And this green circle means that you can continue drawing from here. And if I click on this, you can see the path preview appears, and then I can continue drawing from that point, and then I can say close the path if I wanted to, or in fact leave it open. So the final thing that I want to go over with the basics of the pen tool is drawing holes. So if I draw a shape here, and then let's put some holes in it. Just in order to see the holes, I'm going to need to turn the fill on for this, because at the moment it's only drawing with a stroke. So just loading the settings into the attribute editor just by dragging it in or double clicking. You can turn on the fill checkbox, which gives us a fill. Let's change the color of that to orange, why not? And then to draw a hole, all I need to do is to draw another contour inside the outline contour. So if I just draw a contour in here, then I get a hole, okay? And I can draw another one over on this side, and then I've got another hole. And then if I want to draw a filled bit inside this hole, all I need to do is draw in here, and then that works. Okay. So this way, it's just kind of an automated, if you draw inside a solid, you get a hole. If you draw inside a hole, you get a solid, that kind of thing. And it's just the simplest way, and that's why that's the default in Cavalry. However, there is another way to draw holes, and that is with this fill rule down here, we have even odd, and that's the mode that I've just talked about there, or there's this mode called winding. And what winding means is that the path direction becomes really important. So you can see the path direction is indicated by this arrow on the side here, and that's saying this path is going anti-clockwise. If I select a point at the top here and then make that the first point, it's easier to see. So that's counterclockwise. So when you're in winding order, holes will be whatever the opposite of the shape that their inside is. So if this is counterclockwise, then to draw a hole in here, I need to make the hole clockwise. So if I draw that path in a clockwise fashion, that's going to be a hole. So you can see that one arrow is going counterclockwise and the other arrow is going clockwise, and that means we have a hole in there. Again, if I switch back to even odd, then whatever is inside just becomes a hole, and then anything inside a hole becomes a solid. So that's the easiest way, which is why that's the default. But just so you know, there are multiple ways to do this. So let's move on to shape editing. And in order to demo shape editing, I'm going to create some shapes for us to edit. I'll make couple of lines here. I'm going to push C to get a new contour, and then I'm going to push S to get a new shape, and then I'm going to push escape twice to change to the select tool. You could also use the V key to change to the select tool. Then I'm going to drag the first shape into the attribute editor, go to the stroke tab, choose the stroke color, and then I'm going to pick purple for that, and then I'm going to do the same with the second layer, although I'll choose orange for this stroke. Just so you can see, I've got two different layers. Now there are three ways to move to the shape editing tool. The first way is to use the A key on the keyboard. That'll switch you over. The second way is just to choose it in the toolbox. The edit shape tool is just the second one down. Or you can double click on any editable shape, and that will take you into the tool. And once you're in there, you can do everything you'd expect to be able to do from a shape editing tool. You can move the points around, you can move the Bezier handles around, you can use the Alt key to click on a Bezier handle to break it, and then you can use Alt again to rejoin it. You can use you can Alt click on a point to turn it into a linear point. You can then Alt click again to drag it out back into a Bezier. And you can also use the X key and click on a Bezier point to get rid of one side of the Bezier So it's kind of one half linear, one half Bezier. You can bring it back again by alt-clicking on the point, and you can drag that point out again, and then you can alt-click to join that up. The instructions are kind of down here in the side, so you can turn the help off with the checkbox here, but it's pretty handy if you're learning. So as it says down here, we also have shift, and that will turn on Bezier angle snapping. Just like when you're drawing with the pen tool, you can snap the Beziers to certain angles. The angle is again set in the settings up at the top here. And then another piece of help down here is it says S is split path. So you can split the path. So if I hold down the S key, you can see that a little circle appears, and then this circle is where a new point will appear when I click. So I can insert points into a path like so. And another useful thing that I can do with these points is I can delete them. So I can just hit the delete key to delete a point, and then if I want to open this path and split it at this point, I can use Alt and delete. So that will open the path at the point, delete basically both the adjoining edges to the point and the point itself. So you end up with an open path. Now, there are lots of useful things that you can do with path editing in Cavalry. I'll show you a few. Firstly, you can just select the point on a contour and go to the shape menu. Lots of options in here. You can reverse the contour, so you see that the path direction changed then. So you can see the arrow is pointing clockwise now. If I just go and repeat that action, see that the arrow is now pointing the other direction. So that's how you can reverse paths. You can also select points on two different contours. So these are two different contours because we've got two start points. You can see the arrows here, so two start points, two different contours. We can go to the shape menu and we can go join contours, and that will create a link between the two contours like so. You can even do this from two start points. So if I select two start points and go shape, join contours, you'll see that these two have joined, but now the start point has moved over here. So this is now the start of the contour. And then of course, if you wanted to close these, close the path, you could actually just drag one endpoint onto the other. You see the circle appear, just let go, and then that joins that. So you've then got a complete contour, a closed contour, I should say. Another useful keyboard shortcut when you're working with the Edit Shape tool is H. So H will turn on the transform tool. So if I select some points here and then push H, see that I get a transform box up, and I can kind of scale those points. I can do it from the middle. I can do it with constraint proportions by holding down Shift. And you see that this H is mentioned in the help down here. So I push H to turn that box off. It's also up here in the tool options. You can turn it on up here with transform tool. Something else is that if you select more than one shape, you can edit more than one shape. So I can push H, for example, and I can edit more contours across multiple different layers. So that's pretty handy to be able to do as well. If you double click on one of the points, it will select all of the points on that contour. You can shift double click on a point to select all of the points on that particular path. And then I've got the transform tool up here, so I could rotate these if I wanted to, or scale them or whatever. But that's pretty useful to know. You can also copy and paste paths. So if I were to select a point on this path here, well, actually I can select all of them or select just one of them. Push copy, you see we've got copied path down here. Then if I select this other layer, so editable shape 1, and then I push paste, you see that, I just move this one out of the way, we now have this purple path, which was pasted into the same place as the orange path. It just was underneath because it's underneath in the layer stack. But that's how you can copy and paste paths between different layers. There's also the Lasso tool, and the Lasso tool can be used to select points. So if you hold Alt and then click and drag, you'll see that we can draw ourselves a selection here, and that will select all of the points inside that area when you release the mouse. So another feature that it's really useful to know about is booleans. And I'm going to demo this by building a simple cloud, and I'm going to need the grid turned on, and I'm going to need snapping turned on, and I'm just going to open the snapping settings and make sure that only grid snapping is turned on. And then with that done, I'm going to select the circle tool, and I'm going to draw a circle that has the same width and height. I'm just going to make sure that a grid line is bisecting it in both horizontally and vertically. You can see there's a line going down the middle and a line going down the middle. Then I'm going to make another shape. Let's make one here. Let's call it that. And let's say that. Yeah, let's say that this is the other half of the cloud. I'm just going to move it over slightly. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill in this gap at the bottom. So I'm going to zoom in, I'm going to select the pen tool, and then because snapping is turned on, I can just click and then the point will snap to the nearest grid line. And I can do the same here, and then I can close this and I've got myself a triangle. I can open the settings for the triangle and fill it in and turn the stroke off. Now this is just visually, just so you can see that it's kind of created this flat bottom to the cloud. I didn't actually need to do that to do what I'm going to do next, but I can select all three shapes and I can go to the shape menu, and then we've got boolean options at the bottom here, and what I want is a union. So I just hit union. This creates me a new editable shape that, if I switch to the points mode, you can see has just been has all of the contours merged. So this is just one path basically. So you can see I can just move this at the bottom here. This is just one path now. Just some final tips and tricks before we move on to path animation. So if I draw a shape, or just draw a contour, and then if I switch to the edit shape tool here, you'll notice that when I move some of these points, some of these Bezier handles, how one handle can stretch, but the other handle isn't stretching. And that's because we've had to keep the angle locking on the curve, but we've had to break the weight locking in order to match the shape that I drew with the pencil originally. And you can enable and disable this behavior with a context menu. So I can right click on the point here and then go enable Bezier weight locking, and that will turn on Bezier weight locking. So you can now see that I'm able to drag and the handle on one side and the weight of the handle on the other side will change as well as the angle. And then you can disable this as well just by doing the same thing. So I can now make it so that one side can move, the angle is mirrored, but the weighting isn't. And that's available through the contextual menu here, just down at the bottom. Now there are a few other useful options in here, and I can select an entire path. I can right click and go flip horizontal, for example, or I can go flip vertical as well. And there's a few other useful things as well. You can set the first point, reverse the contour, and even join Bezier handles down here as well. So path animation in Cavalry is super easy. You just need to switch to the pen tool or pencil tool, create an editable shape of some sort, then load the settings for the editable shape into the attribute editor. Then you'll notice that there is a path row. You just need to click the diamond in the path row and that will turn on keyframe editing. And you'll notice that the points and Bezier handles have now got a green outline on them. And this is to indicate that you're animating. It's just that you don't spend 20 minutes moving points around before you realize that you forgot to press the keyframe button. So if you see green, then you're animating. So I've moved the time thumb to frame 40, and then I can move these points around. And I'll just adjust them a little bit. And then this is my incredible animation. And I'm just going to copy and paste the first keyframe. So that's what we've got, just to make this slightly more interesting, I'm going to add magic easing to the first keyframe, so we spring out of that motion, and that's what we've got. Okay, fair enough. So that's, I mean, you can also use the graph editor if you want to adjust the speed of the animation as well. So that's basically path animation, and it's as simple as that. There's not really a lot more to it. Except that we also have another way to animate paths, and that is the cell animation shape. And the cell animation shape is created by using the last button in the shelf. It just looks like a film strip. If you click that, it creates a cell animation shape and then also switches you to the pencil tool. Now, it doesn't actually matter which drawing tool you use in the cell animation shape. You can use the pencil, you can use the pen, and you can edit points that you draw with the edit shape tool. It's just by default we create a pencil. We switch it to the pencil. So let's draw something with the pencil. So as you'll notice that this has instantly created me a keyframe on this frame here, and I can use the shortcut for the keyframes, for moving keyframes in Cavalry, which on the Mac is Command right arrow or left arrow to move forward a frame or backward a frame, and on Windows it's Control right arrow and Control left arrow to move forward or backward a frame. So you can see forwards and then backwards. If you hold down the Shift key while you're doing that, you'll move in 5 frame increments, but 1 frame increments if you just use just the Command or Control right arrow. Let's take a look at the settings for the cell animation shape, and we've got a couple of useful buttons at the bottom here. We can clear a key by using that button. We can copy the current frame's keyframe to the next frame, and that's really useful if you have drawn something that you want to use again but just edited. You can use the copy to next button, and then you can just add a blank keyframe by using the keyframe button there. So we move to the next frame, and then what I need to do is I can just draw into the shape. And as you can see, it's very hard to draw a shape that you can't see. And as soon as you click Oh, I'm on the same frame. As soon as you click on a new frame, you lose the drawing from the last frame. So it'd be much more useful if I had onion skinning turned on. And onion skinning is turned on with this button in the toolbar. So I click that, and then we've got some options here for how many frames are shown, pre and post, and the color of those frames. So I can now, when I now start drawing a new frame, I'll get the kind of the ghost of the previous frame showing up there, so I know exactly what's going on. Wow, drawing with a mouse is really, really hard, especially when you have absolutely no aptitude for drawing. So, oh my word! So here's our beautiful animation, and you can have as many contours as you like, by the way, in a cell animation. It's just a normal path, so you can actually have more paths if you want. And as I said, you can also draw with the other tools as well. And then you can come in here, and then if you want to, say, double click on a contour and move it around or something like that, or adjust a point, that kind of thing, that's how you can edit the paths that are in here. It's just a normal path. It's just a different way of drawing them. And kind of we automatically set keyframes for you when you're on a blank frame and you start drawing something. So it's just a kind of a convenience feature for doing cell animation in Cavalry. So one last thing that I wanted to cover in this video is editable paths and non-editable paths and what the difference is. Well, we can come down here and we can make ourselves a default cog by alt-clicking on the cog tool. I'm just going to move this over to one side here, and then I'm going to go up into the shape menu and click on create editable primitives. And when I have create editable primitives selected and I make a cog, you'll notice the difference between the settings on these two cogs. One of them has the path animation button, so I could go in here and I could do some path animation. I can move these points around and all that kind of thing. And the other one has these belligerent square points that tell me that this is a non-editable path, and I can't click and move these around. But the non-editable path has the advantage that it has all of these fancy settings. So I can change the number of teeth, I can animate this, I can change the pitch radius, the hole radius, all these kind of things. These are all animatable and they're all editable on this cog because it is not you can't do path animation with it, or you can't do any editing on it, and that's because any editing has to be done through these settings, whereas on this shape any editing is done through the drawing tools. So that's the difference between an editable path and a non-editable path. Well, once you have a non-editable path, how do you make it editable? Well, you can do that through the shape menu. You can go up to the options here and you can click make editable, and that will turn it into an editable path. You can also click and drag on a point and we'll get the hint and think that you want to move it, and we'll say, do you want to make this editable? Or you can double click. I think that also works, yep. But the easiest way is just to use a shortcut, which is Command D on the Mac or Control E on Windows, and that will convert this into an editable shape, at which point you get the ability to animate this, so you can then do path animation on this so everything turns green. And yeah, that's basically how you can turn a non-editable path into an editable path. And yeah, just when you're creating primitives with the primitives tools, you do have this option at the top here, create editable primitives, which is the same one up at the top here. And that will mean that any primitive that you create will not have the options like for star, it doesn't have the number of size and all that kind of thing. But instead you can actually then just go straight into drawing and editing this shape. So if I go back into the star tool and turn off create editable primitives, I'm going to get a star shape that has the radius settings and the number of sides and all that kind of thing. So that's the difference between editable and non-editable shapes. One you can animate the settings on, and the other one you can animate the points on. So that's the difference, and how you can convert from one to the other. And that's it. So I hope you've enjoyed the video. Let us know what you think of the new drawing tools in Cavalry 1.1. Even better, show us what you do with them. And yeah, leave comments down below, get in touch with us, feature requests, all that kind of thing, all welcome. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next video.